different meeting, they had the idea, and said the new speakers at SITC. So that's why I'm here, because I said yes before I thought about it. So a little bit about me and why I'm here. I'm a SQL and BI developer. I've been working with various SQL technologies for the last 10 years. And I actually started with .NET, which means that for me, continuous integration and having things in source control is second nature. I also run the Southampton user group, SQL, and Relay, and all sorts of other things. And I've been working with SQL source control for the last 2 years, trying to get it implemented. So when I first started out in the company I'm with now, which is HTEC, we had our database in source control. Fantastic. Sort of. It was on the file system. So we scripted every object out and put it on the file system and committed that into source control, which for us was SITC. And there was 4,000 objects in the platform, each of which had its own create script. And then 6 or so years worth of development with all of the older scripts that went with it. So every time we changed something, we created an older script. So you can imagine the mess that our file system was in. Added to that, we had branching and merging, so every time somebody changed something, they took a branch, made a change, merged it all up, didn't remove the branch, server ran out of space, and it was an absolute nightmare. We also had one database that was used way on our dev server. So that meant that you'd be happily working away, somebody would make a change, all of a sudden everything would stop working. You had no idea who changed what and why. And more importantly, our database and our source control didn't match, because I could run a script on the database and test it. If it didn't work, I wouldn't roll it back, but I wouldn't put it into source control. And likewise, we had stuff in source control that never actually got run on the database. Added to that, we've got all the breaking changes. So somebody comes along and deletes a table because we're not using it anymore. That's fine. There's still stored procedures and views looking at it, but that doesn't matter because nobody notices, nobody cares. And lots of missing objects. And this basically gave us a complete lack of confidence in our code base. We've no idea what's in production, we don't know what's been released, we've got a mismatch of everything, and we can't take what's in source control and rebuild, which in the event of disaster recovery, yeah, sure, our production service will back it up, but if I need to get up and working quickly in the development environment, I've got no way of doing that. So we looked at trying to solve these problems. So we created some more branches, because that's what we all needed, more stuff on the server. And what we effectively did was we created 2 more branches, one for QA and one for release. So we merge our changes from dev into QA, build our scripts from that, deploy it to QA, and get things happening. And then we do the same for a release branch. So there was people that thought that would solve the problem. Unfortunately, if something failed in QA, nobody bothered to roll it back. So now what's in our source control branch for QA doesn't match the QA database either. And it doesn't work because it's failed. And likewise with our release branch. We've just got no idea what's in there. We still can't control source control, and we still got breaking changes and missing objects. So let's have another. So we looked at SQL source control. We looked at using dedicated nodes so that every developer had their own copy of the database. No more merging. The database is now in sync with my source control because I'm checking stuff in, it's all in one place. And the breaking changes are being detected early because if you try to get latest on the code and it doesn't work, then it will tell you and you'll be able to fix it. And that's all well and good, and that's fine. However, we have to change the way we work. This constant stream of branching and merging is a mindset that had to change. We had to convince the team to change. We were talking a team of 25 developers. We have to convince the boss that it's a good idea. And then we have to convince our customer. And we've got a key customer who wants changes now. I want this change and I want it by next week. So, when that worked was a customer would say, I want this change, and it was a very small change request, or bug fix, whatever it was, and that work item was assigned to a specific developer. So the developer wrote the ticket, and the developer creates their own release. And we came up to Redgate to say, can you help us? Because this is a mess, we don't know, we've got no idea what we're doing. And they said, oh, how many releases do you do? And this was May. And we said, year to date, we've done 170. And that's SQL releases. We've got 100 applications in the platform, and that doesn't include the application releases, that's just the SQL releases. And they picked themselves up off the floor and asked why. Didn't really have an answer. So we acknowledged something had to change and set about convincing the team. That's great, but the team don't like change. We're working on 2-week iterations. We're busy, we've got these tickets. We've got these 12 tickets that have got to go out by next Wednesday. We can't do it, we're too busy. We're planning in, for the next iteration, we're planning to look at something. And then the customer says, no, we want this changing, we want that changing. Okay, we'll move change in the process to the next iteration. So trying to convince people that, no, just stop, think, take a breath, let's look at this. And these were our arguments. We've got 25 developers, and they're not all SQL developers, but they're all writing SQL. So some are better than others, and there are a few that would commit stuff that would break somebody else's ability to work. So using a dedicated mode, using SQL source control, we can stop that. You can carry on. Someone over there can go and break their own database to their heart's content, and it won't affect the rest of the team. We've also got consistency. And it makes code reviews easier. When we do code reviews, because we've got this branching and merging and all these older scripts, what we essentially have is a script colon that says if this column exists, then raise an error, or if it doesn't exist, create it, and then someone else adds another column onto the same table, and you've got this script just grows and grows and grows. When I do a code review, I just want to see you've added this column, it's got a sensible name, and it's got the right data type. It's got an index on it if it's necessary and it's sensibly named. I don't want to check reams and reams of code. I just want to see the change we're trying to make. So we've got the team on board. They quite like the fact that I wasn't going to keep berating them for their code reviews. Now I've got to convince the boss. Because the boss is like, well, there's overheads. I've got to pay for licenses. I've got to pay for training. Or at the very least, they're going to lose me for a couple of days while I go around all the developers and get them set up and help them. So you have to offset that. It was time saving. We minimised the impact by incremental adoption. Let's take one project, one database, a small set of developers, get them working on it, and then we can roll it out. And the breaking changes would be easier to detect. And the development manager doesn't like it when the ops manager goes to him and says, developers keep breaking my database. So he gets shouted at, then we get shouted at. Isn't it just a lot easier for us to not deploy rubbish in the first place? It doesn't stop us writing bad code, but it does stop us deliberately breaking things. So we gave him some real life examples. Now, we have an obligation to build Fresco, which is something a lot of companies do, which basically says if the company goes under, or given that my office is next to an airport, plane lands on us, the customer can take the code because they effectively own the code, and they can take it, put it somewhere else, and they can build it and they can get up and running. So we tried to build Fresco, and after 6 weeks we gave up because I've got to run 4,000 create scripts, and then all the older scripts on top of that. And then, oh, look, this script doesn't run because somebody's broken something 3 years ago that we didn't know about. It was weeks of work and we gave up. And then the other one is obviously ops. They don't like it when you break stuff in the database. They don't like being called at 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm told. That's why I'm not DBA, I don't get called at 3 o'clock in the morning. We keep writing stuff against code that we think is in production, but isn't in production. And the customer's unhappy, because that change that we promised them on Wednesday, by 4 o'clock on Friday, the ops team was saying, that's it, we're not deploying it. And the customer saying, but you told us we could have it Wednesday. We're like, yeah, but we thought we'd written it against the database code, and we haven't. We've just made some stuff up. So we were lucky. We had a new project, and we used it as a trial. And we used it to iron out problems, to convince everybody that we could get it to work. So, when we started out with source control, we needed to identify the truth. So, do I take my current dev database? That's what I've been working against, that's what I'm writing code against. Or do I take what's in source control, because actually that's the stuff that we thought we should have deployed, so that should be better, more likely to actually contain tested code. There's only one solution, that you've got to take what's in production. Now, a lot of people will argue that you should take the code that you're working on as your code base. But when you're so far out of step, you've got no choice. So, to great delight, deleting my dev database, getting it back up in production, and saying, right, well, let's use that. We then had to define the process. We had to be very clear about how we were going to work. So, we spoke to Redgate and they advised us that dedicated mode was their recommendation, so that's what we went with. Every developer using their own local copy. There was only 3 of us on that team, so we could have gone away with shared mode, but dedicated mode was a lot easier. It made it easier for us to work on different parts of the database. We managed our releases, so that meant me doing it, basically. Taking everybody else's changes, building one release, and saying, here's one release to our ops guys, rather than 12 a week. They were much happier. We took the source control away for QA databases, because I don't believe that QA should be under source control. Feel free to disagree, but for me, QA should be, this is the production code, plus whatever the developer has given you to test. If you start source controlling it, you end up with not really knowing what you're testing. And it enabled us to build a single release for all environments. So because I know the base that I'm writing against, I can confidently give it to QA team, I can put it on QA team, I can put it into production, and that script will work every time. Because it's all the same. I know what I'm testing. So to show you how easy it is, I've cheated. I've recorded my demos. So hopefully I've got a play button on here somewhere. That's a start. Right, okay. Bear with me. Perhaps it would have been easier to just do the demo. Anybody know how I can play this?
It's
running, is it? Oh good, it's not running for me, fantastic. So I'll train my neck.
It was.
It was?
There was something moving.
Down the bottom, try space.
Try space. Okay. Well, it doesn't want to.
Play button down the bottom 5.
I can't see it. Can anybody else see it?
I think it's in. You've got a bottom over the bottom.
I can see it.
When you want to present the opening, I'm going to see on the screen. Yes.
Right, so you can see that, yeah? I still can't get it to play. How do I get it to play?
Move your cursor mouse.
Play?
Spinning there, so you get the spin.
Oh, okay. All right, okay. So, first thing I'm going to do is I've got my database, I've just taken the AdventureWorks database. I'm going to add some file groups into it because for some reason the DBAs aren't going to stick stuff in the primary. I'm going to just stick a table on that. File group. And because I'm a good developer, I'm going to create a view for my application to look at. So I don't really want to create a table all the time. I'm going to create a nice view. Easy as that. So that's fine. So now I'm going to put it into source control. And you can see it says it's not linked. So I want to link it. I created a repository in SVN, but we'll check over it supports multiple versions. Dedicated database. Okay. as you want. So if you were working on this, and you've got half written code, you just want to commit stuff finished, you just select once you've got everything, initial commit, you want to commit everything. One's about non-standard file groups. This doesn't actually commit the file groups. Excellent. So we've now linked it to source control and committed all the data in. And a nice green icon that tells me my database is under source control. I've got to try and play this one now. So this is my second developer on the team, and in order to get the code from source control onto this developer, we've got to just create a database. Don't need all the objects, just the database. There it is, and open source control, and link it. I should have spent the demo, sorry. Choosing the same repository as before, still in dedicated mode. Link. And then this time we've linked it, but actually you haven't actually got the changes there. So we're going to do a get latest. You'll see the same bunch of objects that are just committed. And just click get latest. Obviously, I've got the same warning about my non-standard standard file group, but because I'm a developer, I don't have to read the warnings, so I'm just going to click OK anyway. Nobody reads error messages, do they? And it's like, of course, trust. Trust you should read the error messages. And what this is telling me is it failed, and it tells you why it's failed. So you can easily go and correct it and say, okay, so I need to create this file group, so I'm going to get the scripts from someone else has got them, or production, or wherever he's getting them from, and then now I should be able to get latest. Still with the same warnings, but this time it's going to go through absolutely fine. So great, I've now got two developers working on their own individual copies of the database linked to the same repository and source control. It's all good, we can progress from here, we can start actually making some changes. And yeah, you can see that I've now got all the objects now. So, as I said, not all of the developers on the team are necessarily SQL developers. And they might try to be helpful and try to be clever. We'll help the DBA out, we'll clean up some objects that we don't need. It's one less thing for me to back up, one less thing for me to worry about. So I'm going to drop that table because none of my applications are looking at that table. So obviously it's not being used. No, none of the applications are using it because I just clicked view for them to use instead. But very helpful. I'm going to add a column to the table with a sensible name, not column 1. And I'm going to commit those changes in. I'll edit, I'm going to drop. And you'll see there's an error message there that says, this may result in data loss. Yeah, but no one's using it. And the DBAs will have a backup anyway, so it doesn't matter, does it? I'm still being helpful. Yeah, and I am a bad developer. So I can commit those changes, and that's fine. I've done some holidays now. See you all in 2 weeks, and I'm sure the database will find what I want. So now I'm back with good development number 1. But unfortunately we don't do much communication because I'm just going to create a column on the same table that we just created. And I'll try to commit and it says you've got a conflict. And that's not a useful thing, because I have seen instances of someone saying, where's my change gone? Where someone's got a conflict and just gone, oh, I'll just override mine. Mine must be right. So I'll just override it. You can do that, but it makes it really obvious that there is something else on that object that you haven't got in your local version, and do you really, really want to override it? And then again, I've got the drops table, and yeah, okay, error messages telling me I'm going to lose data. And I've also got an error message on the column I've just overwritten from the source control version, but that's okay because I know about that. Oh, and it's failed. And this time it's failed because I've got an invalid object name of error log, because that's the table I've got to drop from. I've got a view that looks at it. So straight away I can see I've got a broken change there, and I really don't want that drop to go to production. So I can go to view history on the object, and I can go and have a look at who's changed it, so I know who's going to follow, and get them to put it right. So I'm going to unzip that drop because I really don't want that. I can't get it out of source control anyway. It's broken. So I'm just going to get the change that I'm aware of, and then I can go and re-add my changes back in. And then I can commit that. So I haven't lost anything. It's just, it makes you think before you go overwriting things. So, having gone through this pain and having gone through people dropping objects when they shouldn't do and all this nonsense, where are we now? Well, we understand our schema. We know what we're looking at when we look at our development environment. We can build the database time and time and time again, and it will work. Because if it doesn't work, we know who's broken it, and we can get it fixed straight away, rather than realising 3 years down the line that something did something that broke it. And we can baseline our released code, so we can say, this is what went to production. We have a single release schedule, so we don't have this nonsense of 170 releases in 5 months, and then trying to work out which one it was that might have broken the website. Our releases are built on a known scheme of QA. It's what's on the floor plus what we're testing. Our production releases have been through QA because it's the same script that we're running. So it's not a case of it works on my machine, it works on the QA environment as well, and the UAT environment. So you don't have quite so many factors. We've got confidence. When I write a piece of code now, I'm confident that it's going to work in production because I know what's in production. Because I've got a history. We've got consistency in our database and in our approach. Going forward, we're starting to now use SQL CI. We're starting to write tests. So not only will things break when people commit bad code or break code into our database, we can actually have tests that run on our CI machine that tell you. And we have a big red banner flash up to say the bill's broken, and everybody points and laughs, and if it's a Friday afternoon, they're going to bring donuts in on Monday. Any questions? Yeah.
How did the team feel about this? Were they full of lightness and joy, or did they leave in their droves looking for some other dark corner to go and plough their trail?
So how did the team feel? They haven't left in their droves, fortunately. They're all quite enthusiastic. They're all keen to get their hands on it. The trouble is they want to be administrators of it now. So I want to do the releases. Can I do the releases? Yeah, okay. But you can't all do releases. What we realise is we probably have a new job role, which is the release manager. So So someone who takes all the disparate parts of the system that people are working on, all the individual tickets, and has to tile that together. And that has been me. I'm hoping to hand that over to someone else, because I actually quite like writing code every now and again, rather than just pulling other people's bits together.
Perhaps you could rotate it, rotate the responsibility.
Yeah, that's an option to rotate it, yeah. They've been quite keen. Obviously, it's a new toy, and if they've got management backing that they can have time out of their iteration to actually set it up, start using it, and have someone come and sit with them, they're quite happy. Anybody else?
Just tools in the management spend and sort of there's obviously concern when the person wants to see it and team development was improving faster.
Yeah, development is faster, code reviews are faster as well. And we spend a lot of time doing code reviews. So, yeah, when you're adding a small change to a table or a stored procedure, you haven't got to write rows of code for a start, and then someone else has got to come along and review it. And then it goes to production, and they say, well, why have you written it like this? It's a process, we have to. So it's a lot easier. We actually use SQL Compare to generate the scripts for us as well, which means that we can give them a script that's come from a tool as well. So they don't have to code review that. They're quite happy to accept that it's come from SQL Compare. As long as the change that's being made is sensible, they're not too worried about all the stuff that goes around, making sure it goes in the code.
Have you worked out a policy for version and branching?
So versioning and branching, that's next on my list. Now that I've got the project is now going to be 20 developers up in this database instead of just 2 of us. So we need to do something like that. We're looking at using potentially branching or potentially tags because we're using SVN. So we can tag certain objects to say they form part of this, either this release ticket or part of this work item. And then when we come to build the scripts for deployment, we can say I want to include these 3 work items, and that is these 12 objects. And then have QA tag them to say that they've passed QA. So that we can then take just that subset and give it to production. That's next on our list.
How often do you refresh the developers' databases?
We're doing it on a monthly cycle because we're moving from a haphazard release schedule to a monthly release schedule. So you deploy to QA, deploy to UAT, deploy to production stable, then we'll refresh the dev, QA and UAT kit accordingly. How we're going to do that with our local copies, I don't know, because if you've got something that you're halfway through writing, you don't want to lose it, but it's in source control, you won't lose it. It's just, so you can refresh the dev database and just put it up.
Any obstacles you found on the way?
Any obstacles?
Anything
That's tough mud, I think.
anything difficult, anything that was a challenge?
The database in question we started with, we've actually got 4 databases on the source control now, and one of them was a data warehouse, and that went in like a dream. We've got a couple of other databases, and they were very simple, but the one that we started with was our existing production code base, and it was very big, it had lots of errors, and it had lots of unusual stuff in it. So just trying to get it up and running was quite hard. Obviously, if you can start at the very start of the project, don't wait until you're 6 months down the development cycle before you go, oh, perhaps we should put this into source control. If you do it from the start, it's going to be a lot easier and then just build it up. That was our biggest obstacle, was the size of what we were dealing with at the start.
Are the security models on the development, QA and production the same? And if not, how do you cope with that? Because that's one thing I've found with SQL service source control.
Yeah, so are the security models the same? So users and roles? No, they're not. I've tried to tie it down so that developers don't have access to the QA box, because they've got a tendency to go and tinker with things, which just looking at the Lighthouse stuff that I've seen this morning would be really useful for me to know that the developer's been in the QA box. So we would typically create a role and put developers in one role, or certain developers in certain roles. So we would create different roles for different databases, and then we just filter those. So when you check stuff into source control, you can choose not to check certain things in via a filter. We've done the same. We have CDC in our main database, and because you have to enable CDC at the database level, if you can't check that in and someone tries to do a get latest on it, invariably it will fail because the schema doesn't exist and things like that. So we just say, if you want CDC enabled, just run this script and enable it for certain tables, and we just filter it out of source control as well.
So when you add a new file to it, there is a same file. So when you add a new file, it's always good to change the biggest changes on the file system. But you say like you roll out on the data accounts. So when you have multiple files, multiple files in it.
Okay, so files and file groups.
Yeah.
Files and file groups currently aren't supported under SQL source control because they're at the database level rather than the object level.
Okay.
So you need to create them individually on different developers. Yeah.
And can we add it? Validation scripts something like that?
Can you add post-validation scripts?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably some PowerShell you can write. We all write PowerShell.
Yeah.
Yes? Because depending on your build server, you use SITC, and I know you can put PowerShell in that. So if you had your database building through SITC, you could then put some PowerShell on as an extra step to validate stuff.
With respect to file groups, if they're not supported, then the developers simply have, what most developers have is two files, and an alternate file. And your production service got quite well laid out file groups. How do you ensure that when you push it through the deployment pipeline that it goes to the file groups you want?
Well, the key is that when you first set up your database in your development environment, and that's what we've
So you need to set up the development database with the same file groups?
Yeah, but if you've got a team of 25 people in the same database, I set it up on mine, put it into source control. Yes, my file groups aren't in there, but all of my objects that I've created on the file group are in the right file group. So if they don't come to get latest and they haven't got that file group, they'll have to go and create it. So, and then we can move the file group as well. Yeah, we set a default file group as default, so you still have to specify with the file group. Is there beer going on? Okay, well I'm over time anyway, so if you've got any questions, I'll be loitering around and come home.